Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Daryl Molina Sarmiento, and I'm the Executive Director of Communities for a Better Environment. We are here in Wilmington, California, the community part of the city of Los Angeles that has the highest concentration of oil drilling in the city. We are part of a statewide coalition called Vision, Voices in Solidarity Against Oil in Neighborhoods, and we are represented by our members of the Voices Coalition, including the Center for Race, Poverty, and the Environment, and the California Environmental Justice Alliance, along with CBE members and staff. We came together as community groups and allies who are concerned with the impact of oil extraction in communities in Kern and Los Angeles counties. The data is overwhelming. Fossil fuels accelerate the climate crisis, with frontline environmental justice communities getting hit the hardest. Over 2 million Californians, predominantly people of color, live within 3,200 feet of an active oil well. We are tired of being treated like sacrifice zones, with dangers, health impacts of living next to oil production, including higher rates of asthma and respiratory illness, low birth weights and adverse birth outcomes, heart disease, and more. We appreciate the leadership of Governor Newsom in prioritizing this urgent environmental justice and public health issue, and it is important to see the creation of a 3,200-foot health and safety buffer zone. We look forward to working with the Governor's Office, the Department of Conservation, and Cal EPA to create a final rule that prevents new permits from being issued within this 3,200-foot setback zone, including prohibiting re-drilling of existing wells. It is important to keep in mind that preventing re-drilling of existing wells is essential to putting an end to neighborhood oil drilling operations in environmental justice frontline communities. The fight isn't over. We know there is no safe distance from oil and communities. We need drilling operations phased out in our communities with robust plans to put in place to protect workers and communities. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Dr. Cedric Jamie Rutland from the American Lung Association.
Thank you so much. Such important information. Thank you, Governor Newsom, for being here this morning, this afternoon. My name is Cedric Jamie Rutland. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician in Southern California with a focus on autoimmune lung disease, of which asthma is a subtype. I'm also a national spokesperson for the American Lung Association. When you think about the lungs are responsible for snatching the environment that surrounds you and introducing those products to the inside of your body. And it's clear we need to do more to protect people's lungs. The last 16 months have underscored just how important lung health is and how inequitably poor lung health falls in our most vulnerable communities. Today, we are standing in one of the most polluted regions in the United States. We see clearly that oil and gas operations are a major contributing factor to the poor health outcomes facing too many of these residents, and especially in Black and brown communities. This is also true in many other areas of this state. The research tells us that oil and gas operations generate toxic air contaminants that threaten health in a number of ways, including reduced lung function, leading to asthma exacerbations, diagnoses of asthma, and hospitalizations, these patients that I take care of on a daily basis. In my practice, I can see the fear in families trying to make sure that their child can take that deep breath. I can see this clearly, and diagnosing a child with asthma, which is autoimmune inflammation of that airway, is extremely hard for me. In communities near oil and gas operations that are medically underserved, we must recognize too many families lack access to care and treatment while living with major sources of harmful pollution in their backyard. California must take all possible actions at every source of pollution to ensure every child, every person, every parent can breathe easy, clean, and healthy air. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to speak a few words. I'm now going to introduce the fantastic Dr. Carol Archie.
Thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you about this critically important issue. I am a maternal fetal medicine specialist. And maternal fetal medicine, we deal with all sorts of complications of pregnancy. The major diagnoses that we treat in our population, which is mainly a Medi-Cal population, the top one is obesity, next is hypertension, next is besides diabetes. And all of those top complications that face women of color and women in poor neighborhoods are complicated by the fact that we can't use the major first-line choice for treating them. That's a healthy diet and exercise. Exercise treats all of them. And I cannot tell people who live where they shouldn't be breathing the air to exercise appropriately, enough to keep them from developing the complications that kill many women of color in childbirth, that follow them for the rest of their lives, that complicate the rest of their lives because, oh, they have really big babies, because how do we keep babies from getting too big? We have the mothers exercise. And when the babies get too big, what happens to the moms? They get cesarean sections, and they get scars on their uteruses. And they end up with more cesarean sections, which makes it more dangerous for them to carry their future pregnancies, and makes it more difficult for them to live with the scars that are left on their uteruses for the rest of their lives. I want to thank the governor for tackling this issue, because it is what will save lives. Moms, babies. I want my mothers to live well and live long enough to be grandmothers and great-grandmothers without chronic pain, without medication. We need to have clean air and healthy food for our mothers and our children and our babies. So thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Van a notar un cambio de idioma. Este mensaje es para nuestra comunidad hispana. Quiero presentarme, soy el doctor Ilan Shapiro, soy el director médico de Bienestar y Salud para un grupo que se llama Altamed, clínicas federalmente calificadas, y aparte también represento y soy parte del miembro de la Academia Americana de Pediatría, justamente en nuestro capítulo local. Vengo aquí como pediatra, vengo aquí también como un californiano y muy importante, vengo aquí como un padre. Porque la historia se está representando en estos momentos, en cada clínica que estamos alrededor de nosotros, es impresionante. La historia de asma, la historia de problemas y falta de los días en escuela por problemas respiratorios. Y si nosotros comparamos las áreas donde nuestras comunidades de color están siendo y están viviendo, nosotros podemos ver justamente la correlación de qué contaminantes tenemos alrededor de nosotros, de qué está pasando justamente al lado de nuestras carreteras Y muy importante, como dijo mis compañeros, la falta de áreas verdes y naturales para que nuestros niños corran. Hoy tenemos el futuro en nuestras manos. La pandemia nos ha dado completamente la idea de todo lo que son determinantes sociales de la salud. Eso habla mucho de la justicia social, la justicia también del ambiente. En este momento yo ya no puedo ver ese exceso y ese sufrimiento de las familias, donde vienen otra vez por la infección, vienen otra vez porque el asma no se está controlando, porque estas cosas no nada más repercuten en su salud, pero en el futuro del niño. Si nuestros hijos no están en las escuelas y están viviendo días de enfermedad, ¿qué podemos hacer? Por eso una de las prioridades más importantes que nosotros tenemos en este momento como pediatras, como la Academia Americana de Pediatrías, como la comunidad, es limitar, por favor, limitar lo que está pasando y muy importante, crear esa promesa que gracias al gobernador y todos los representantes que tenemos el día de hoy, de dar un mejor futuro, abrir conversaciones y prometerle a nuestros propios hijos una cosa que nosotros en este momento no estamos teniendo: un aire limpio, una corrida afuera sin tener que tener miedo de utilizar el cubrebocas, no por el COVID-19, sino por la contaminación que está allá afuera. Muchas gracias. I would like to invite Supervisor Han to the podium.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thanks to the governor for choosing Wilmington for this announcement. That is so significant, and I wanted to thank Executive Director of this Boys and Girls Club, Mike Lansing. I know Sergio Carrillo is here, who's the president of the board, for hosting us this morning and for staying in this community to serve these boys and girls who in so many ways are underserved. So thank you for your commitment. And thank you to those here for the Communities for a Better Environment. You've been fighting these fights for as long as I can remember, and I appreciate your advocacy. You know, our dependence on oil and gas has been devastating. The carbon emissions are driving disastrous global change, polluting our air. But no one has suffered more directly than the families that live, work, play next to these oil and gas drilling sites. I applaud the move that Governor Newsom is announcing today. It's a huge step to protect Californians from the harmful health impacts of drilling. And particularly in this community, again, this community already suffers from the pollution that's generated by our ports. And while our ports are the economic engine of this region, this state, this country, it shouldn't come at the expense of the health of those who live near the ports. Here in LA County, we're on the road to phasing out oil and gas drilling entirely in unincorporated areas. With the leadership of Supervisor Holly Mitchell, we've already taken action to ban new drilling, and now we're focused on our labor partners, those people who've made their living with good jobs in the oil and gas industry. But I think the time has come. We don't have to choose between good jobs and protecting the health of our communities. We can have both. And we need to be intentional. We're working on a plan to support these workers in the oil and gas industry and help them transition to good-paying jobs in clean energy. And that's how we take a stand for the health and the environment. And that's also how we lift up our communities in the process. This is a good day, Governor. This is a good day for the health and well-being of families up and down the state of California, and I applaud you for your courage in this decision. And now I would like to introduce the fabulous Assembly Member, Al Marisucci.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Al Marisucci, and I have the privilege of representing the South Bay, just next door to Wilmington. Once again, Governor, I want to welcome you to the South Bay. The real South Bay. Neighborhood oil drilling must stop. In 2019, I introduced Assembly Bill 345, a bill supported by environmental justice advocates throughout the state. The bill called for oil well setbacks of at least 2,500 feet from homes, schools, playgrounds, and healthcare facilities, again, throughout the state. The goal of the bill was to protect children and families, especially those living in low-income communities of color, from the well-documented harmful impacts of oil wells in the backyards of where children play and go to school, where families live, and where the sick and elderly receive medical care. But the bill died in the Senate last year in the face of the powerful combined opposition of big oil and the state building and construction trades unions. Senators Monique Limon and Scott Wiener took up the cause and tried again, reintroduced Senate Bill 467, again calling for a public health and safety buffer zone from oil drilling from neighborhoods. But once again, facing the same powerful combined opposition, the bill died. Soon after my bill was killed, I received a call from the administration, from Secretary Crowfoot, promising me that the governor would be carrying on this fight for environmental justice. Today, Governor Newsom is delivering on his promise with a 3,200-foot oil well setback requirement for new wells and strengthened emission controls and mitigations for existing wells. I thank Governor Newsom for his leadership, and I look forward, because this fight is not over, I look forward to continue to ensure that these measures protect all communities, regardless of whether the wells are new or existing. I'd like to now introduce Senator Lena Gonzalez.
Hello, everybody. Well, this is really personal for me because there's another Gonzalez family that lives up the street here on Q, which is my aunt and uncle. And every summer I would come here. I would pop into the Boys and Girls Club, and thank you. And I, too, would run around these areas, Q Street, and so it's really personal for me to be here to actually see this really significant action being put forward by our governor, and I want to thank you very much for being here and being present. And I also want to thank our residents, CBE, Ceja. They have been working so very hard, not just on this type of rule, but on so many environmental justice issues that we have so much work to do, and we know we do. And with them and their work and advocacy, I know we will get it done. So research shows that oil production worsens air quality and negative health impacts for all Californians, but especially, as been mentioned, Black, Latino, and Indigenous people. Not only is oil production connected to higher rates of chronic illness like asthma and heart disease, and honestly, guys, I am tired of my district being called Asthma Alley. I'm really tired of it. But recent studies have also shown that long-term exposure to a single microgram of toxic particulate matter from oil production increases the risk of death from COVID by 11 times. 11 times. Low-income communities are definitely feeling the impacts the worst. And it's home to more than 500,000 energy jobs. It's 5 times more than clean energy jobs than fossil fuel jobs. And California is also home to 4 in 10 solar jobs. So there is an opportunity for us to transition. And as the daughter of a tradesperson, a truck driver, I know all too well that we need to get and ensure that our workforce is a part of this, and we will absolutely ensure that. Again, I want to thank our governor. I want to thank his administration and all of the community members that have been here today, and of course Wilmington for always showing up, and we will do good by this. We promise you we will. Thank you very much. Next, I have our amazing supervisor, LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell.
Supervisor Hahn, thank you for welcoming us to your hood. It gives me great pleasure to be here. You know, thanks to the white coats, the amazing environmental justice organizations, and my elected policy-making colleagues, they've really said it all. I will just add a few, very few comments. As the mother of a black male asthmatic, as the proud product of South Los, growing up in Lamert Park, mile and a half from the Inglewood oil fields my entire life, it was, of course, important to me that when I had the privilege of earning the vote of the then 47th Assembly District residents and going to the State Assembly for the first time in 2010, that one of the first bills I would introduce had to do with stopping hydraulic fracturing. I then entered into a very small group of legislators who had said no to acceptance of oil money and stepped up to the plate to engage in this conversation around equity and health safety. We've come a long way since just really a little over a decade ago, where we now have many more legislators, I'm proud to say, who get it and who have stepped up and closed the gap around this critical issue across the state. We had healthy, important debates then. We brought in aerial shots of this community in Inglewood oil fields to help educate my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who then represented Kern, so they could see what it looked like to live next door to an active oil drilling site. Very different from the landscape of oil drilling in Kern. So it was important that we spent this past 10 years, and the environmental justice community got organized and got stronger and got better to bring us to where we are today with this current administration. And so I thank you. Very proud to have joined my sisters on the LA County Board of Supervisors in introducing, it was really a trifecta. There were 3 motions introduced in September that will really take LA County to the forefront of stopping oil extraction in communities like Wilmington and communities across LA County. And that is exactly what we were supposed to do. And I'm proud to have been a member of the board to do that. It gives me great privilege to introduce you to my friend, who is a partner and a father, who I have directly witnessed him lead with a sense of courage and conviction to truly meaningfully represent the hardly reached communities across this great state and those of us who call those communities home. Please welcome the 40th governor of the great state of California, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, Senator Supervisor Holly Mitchell. Thank you to all of the members of the community that are here, to each and every one of you that have taken your time to be here, particularly those advocates that are responsible for this announcement here today. Daryl, thank you for your leadership and all of your allied organizations. Thank you for your faith and devotion to a cause that's not only united you, but is increasingly uniting people all across this state, and we hope all across the rest of the nation. And that's to address the fundamental issue of our time, the existential issue of our time, and that is our planet's running a fever. That we are living in a state that is burning up, in a state that is heating up, in a state where millions and millions of Californians are choking up. The hots are getting a lot hotter, the dries are getting a lot drier, and as is the case almost on an annual basis, the wets are getting a lot wetter. Atmospheric rivers, flooding, extremes, extreme weather, all across not just this state, but all across the United States. Extreme weather that last year alone impacted taxpayers by the tune of $99 billion. That's what the taxpayers in the United States spent, $100 billion just to address emergencies related to climate impacts. If you're fiscally conservative, you're celebrating the announcement we're making here today. But for me, this is not about dollars and cents. This is about morality. The issue that really unites us here today is around the issue of justice, environmental justice, economic justice. They go hand in hand. Social justice. It's about public health. It's about safety. It's about dignity. It's about the ability to live your life out loud. You've heard from so many of the representatives, and you've heard from so many of the leaders about their personal story, the doctors that are in their side of a bed trying to encourage mothers to get exercise, but those mothers are told that they have to close the windows at their own home and they shouldn't go out and exercise. The economic cost, the health care cost, the generational impacts of our neglect. And so today, we're not denying that reality. We're taking some responsibility. Now, I know this for many has been a long and frustrating and arduous journey. And I respect and appreciate the incredible advocacy that brings us here today. I want to thank the Assembly member for his stewardship, for his faith and devotion to this cause. I want to thank former Assemblywoman and Senator, now Supervisor Holly Mitchell, for her commitment to this cause. There's been a baton that's been passed to the legislature. Thank you to the senators that are here that have stood up and have fought the good fight, and despite some setbacks, made progress, pierced the expectation. They stretched the mind, and we say this all the time, once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form. They created a pathway, they created momentum, where expectations were raised, and those expectations appropriately landed on the desk of the governor. And that's why a little over 2 years ago, we initiated a process that we now are communicating and advancing here today. In November of 2019, we directed then Dogger, now CalGen, to move forward with a rulemaking process to determine what an appropriate setback would be to address the health and safety concerns of communities like this. That process unfolded over a course of 2 years with over 40,000 public comments, unprecedented in any rulemaking process. As that process was unfolding, there were legislative efforts unfolding to do the same on not just setbacks, on issues of fracking and other environmental justice issues that saw similar fate to Al's bill and the Assembly's efforts. But progress, nonetheless, was inevitable. That process took shape more formally with 15 members of an advisory committee, health and engineer experts, UC Berkeley leading that effort, peer-reviewed, other studies all across the state of California, from USC studies to studies in states large and small, Pennsylvania, Texas, and other parts of the globe. And the overwhelming evidence came back that 2,500 feet wasn't good enough, that we need to extend that barrier of protection, not just for new wells, but as was noted, around modifications for existing operations. It's and, not or. It's not one or the other. We have to do both. And so today, we are putting out the proposed rulemaking that will go through a process over the course of many, many months and will ultimately advance a formal rulemaking that will codify the proposal that we are advancing here today. 3,200-foot setbacks in this proposal are the most aggressive in the United States. It's not just the distance, but it is our expectation that we are going to close many of the loopholes that exist and persist in other states that have provided some more modest buffers. This impacts, if you want to understand the magnitude of this rulemaking impacts roughly 30% of oil operations in the state of California. 30%. This is not insignificant. Darrell was saying within a 2-mile radius, or rather within a half-mile radius, 2 million Californians within a half-mile radius live in communities like this, directly impacted by these oil and extraction operations. So we believe this is a significant milestone, but a milestone. No one is naive. The work that needs to be done, we hear that loudly and clearly. And we understand that good enough never is. And I just want to note, and forgive me for being long-winded, and we'll try to tie this up because everybody laid out the details even better than even our team could And by the way, let me recognize the team. Jared Bloomfeld, let me recognize Wade Crowfoot, let me recognize UDOC, let me recognize Lauren Sanchez. They all deserve a big round of applause for all their hard work over a few years to get here. But the significance of this is not lost on me either. I drove down here. There's an old phrase that says society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. Yes, we are attacking the root cause, and that's pollution. We are attacking polluters, not climate change. You want to address climate change, attack pollution and polluters. But we also have to recognize that we have a responsibility, commensurate responsibility, to reduce demand for oil, not just supply of oil. And I want to mark, because many people don't know this, and so it needs to be repeated, or it needs to be communicated for those who haven't heard it once. Since 1995, California has made tremendous progress reducing supply. We peaked in terms of oil extraction in 1985. About just shy of 425 million gallons were extracted. In 2020, dropped down by 65+%. It's about 147 million gallons. 65% reduction in extraction, but at the same time, our demand went up. We have to commit to reducing our demand. And I want to remind people, no state in America has done more and is doing more to reduce demand. We mean business on the issue of demand. We were the first state to require every new car sold in the state of California to be an alternative fueled vehicle. We are getting rid of gas-powered engines in this state. And proving California's might as the 5th largest economy in the world, proving our domestic consumption capacity having an impact across the country and around the world. You saw the largest automobile manufacturers in the world and in the United States, Ford, GM, and others, follow suit, making bold, audacious commitments. What seemed extreme a year and a half ago is increasingly now mainstream all across this country and around the globe, proving that California needs to be a first mover, proving California has a responsibility to lead. We're the size of 21 states combined. And so demand and supply. $3.9 billion, the senators and assembly member were kind enough to support, and to Supervisor Hahn, that's even by LA County Board of Supervisors standards, $3.9 billion is real money just for electric vehicle infrastructure this year alone. And we put hundreds of millions of additional dollars up for a real transition, not just a just transition. I mean, we talk about just transition. It can't be a platitude. We have to commit to the hard work of taking care of those that are taking care of their families, working hard on these fossil fuel sites. But we have to give them a pathway to a cleaner, greener, cheaper, more reliable future. We put a down payment on that this year of $600 million for grants for regions that will be impacted by our transition. We are committing next year's budget, which I'm working on already, to put hundreds of millions more to plug and abandoned wells and to hire the same people that were reworking these wells to plug and abandon wells. And we are going to work closely with communities, supervisors like yours and counties, large and small, Kern included, as it relates to the impacts on their general fund, as it relates to impacts on community services, the indirect impacts of this transition across the board. I'm mindful of our responsibility to do more in that space as well. So this is one commitment of many that the state is making to lead this nation, and I would argue lead the world on this transition. We don't see oil in our future. We don't. And California has a special responsibility, and today we're advancing with more accountability a cleaner, brighter, greener future that I think will promote a kind of policy making that will advance the cause that unites us here today all across this country and around the globe. And so I want to just close by thanking everybody again for their expectation and for this dialectic that we've had for the last few years around this issue of setbacks. I want to thank the advocacy community and all the remarkable leaders. I want to thank our healthcare leaders for reminding us this is about public health, public safety, clean air, clean water. This is about our kids and our grandkids and our future. A greener, cleaner, brighter, more resilient future is in our grasp, and this is a commitment to advance that cause, and I'm honored to be here today to make that announcement. Thank you all very, very much for coming. With that, there may be some questions, and I have my I've never ever been to a press conference without a damn question. So thank you for that. Let's do a photo. I love it.